growing up, when I decided to start learning concept art and get into the industry, I really had no guidance locally. So I had to rely 100% on online sources, and it was a bit more scarce than things are today. But now we have, a place like Baghdad Game Lab where they are actively trying to offer opportunities, these kind of cohorts that cover the educational side of things, because sadly we also lack academic education when it comes to game development in general. So this is something worthy of recognition, and we are quite appreciative, because at Kevir Entertainment, we also believe that it's our social responsibility to not only create games and full projects, but also contribute to the new ecosystem of game developers, artists, programmers, and try to be of guidance and assistance whenever possible. To tell you a little bit about myself, so my name is Haron. I'm a concept artist. I come from a background of art. I studied fine arts, and then later I studied animation. But just because of my interest in drawing and art in general, while I was doing my animation program, I decided that I wanted to focus on designing. So that is concept art. It's something that I always found cool, coming up with really cool creatures, ideas, and growing up, I was quite inspired by these sort of designs from video games, films, cartoons, animated movies, and etc. So that's where my journey began. And right now, I'm an art director and also concept artist at Kevir Entertainment. I'm also a co-founder of the studio, where we are trying to tell impactful stories from our own region, stories that are original and relevant to us, and bring them to a global audience. And we are right now actually in a very exciting time for the studio, but also quite busy. So next month we are going to be at Gamescom, where we will exhibit and basically debut the announcement trailer of our game, Operation Stutter. And this is where I wanted to apologize because in this last few weeks, we've been quite busy and a little bit exhausted. So if my tone is low, if my energy is a bit off, you'll have to excuse me, because we are working very hard to bring something cool to you guys eventually. But without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. We'll get into this sort of presentation. I want it to be very casual. You guys can stop me whenever you want if you have questions. I just want to go over what concept art is, show you some examples that inspired me, and talk about the industry, how somebody can get into it, and then give you also some tips on how to get into this, if this is something you find interesting or feel inspired by. I'm going to share my screen, Zainab, and let me know if things are working properly. Screen 2, presentation is, I think this is what I would do. Yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so do you see the entire Photoshop or only the slide, like the canvas?
We can see the slide, concept art, yes. And then
Okay, so when I zoom in, does it respond? Okay, perfect. Okay, so we will start here. Yes, this was the little introduction we have. And what is concept art? I mean, you guys are in a cohort for learning and game development. So some of you might come from outside as well, because this course is, I believe, open to public. But since you're here, then it means that you at least have interest in the subject. And what concept art is basically is the process of communicating ideas through visual mediums. So, communicating concepts, ideas through drawing, painting, even sometimes like 3D art mixed with photography. But at the core of it, which is evident in the name, this is concept art or concept design, right? So the focus is heavily on the idea. We are, as concept artists, Our job is to deliver ideas, and then we'll talk about the pipeline as well, like where these ideas are later implemented. But basically, that is the gist of what concept art is. And there are different types, different things that we as concept artists deliver to our industry. And this, most importantly, we design characters. So all these, by the way, are from The Last of Us, all these artworks. So for example, this is the original character art from Naughty Dog for the character of Joel in The Last of Us. Before Joel was ever done as a 3D model for the game, there were a lot of these kind of concepts that the 3D artists then relied on, right? So you have other sketches for different characters, and then we have props, right? So every game, every project, every film contains a lot of different tools and props and environment assets that need to be designed before they're produced. So this is also something that we do. We develop really cool weapons, tools, just random stuff that you find in the environment. Speaking of environments, we also produce environments. So these are a few of the concept art environments, I believe, from different parts of the game, but also maybe this one is from the show. Oh no, it's also from the game. So we do all these things to establish to the entire team that is working on the game or the film or any other project, the feeling and the visual language of the project, right? So usually when it comes to these kind of larger projects, films or game development, there are tens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people working on the same project. You have artists, you have developers, you have production people, you have UI designers, you have all these different like animators, visual effect artists, and they all rely on the concept department to provide the visual language of these projects in the pre-production phase, right? So before we move into the production of these games and projects, the concept art team sits down with the art directors and the creative directors to come up and decide what is this game going to look like. Is it going to be stylized? Is it going to be simple? Is it going to be realistic? Is it going to be cinematic? Is it going to be funky? What kind of colors? What kind of textures? What kind of characters? And all of this is done by concept artists. That is why our responsibilities are quite heavy, because we come up with the overall visual language, and then everybody else in the pipeline, 3D artists, animators, visual artists, they will all refer to our concepts to build the product that the players or the viewers finally see. But it doesn't stop here. So this is not the only thing we do. Something really cool that we do is vehicles. So these are from Star Wars. For example, this is the Razor Crest from The Mandalorian. This is a concept art for it. We have the X-Wing. This is an original sketch by Drew Johnston, I believe. These are other spaceship designs from The Return of the Jedi. And then we have also creatures, so the creatures that you see in video games, films, they're all also designed by concept artists. And sometimes, especially on the larger projects, there are concept artists who specialize in only one of these fields. So you have people that only do characters. You have people that only do props. You have people that only do environments. You have people that only do creatures, and they're very good at it. And then you have people that only do vehicles. Why? Because concept art can be quite difficult, because we have to create and design these assets to be really believable and realistic in a sense, at least within the context of the world that they find themselves in. And that is why it takes a huge amount of research and dedication to be really good at one of these specific fields. But for junior level, like for designers that get into the industry, they usually are generalists. So they design all sorts of things. They do environments, props, variations for character costumes, and all different things. But generally, we are supporting, as junior artists, the more senior artists in developing the world. Moving from there, what do we exactly do, and what tools do we use? So we covered a little bit what we do, right? We develop the visual language of these projects. The tools that we use generally are quite standard in a sense. Like we either use digital tools like Photoshop, Procreate, ZBrush, or we use traditional tools like pen and papers, just gouache or painting, because the tool doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're conveying ideas. You can use whatever tools that you're comfortable with, as long as the idea is conveyed. However, the standard for the industry usually is digital because it allows for easier iterations, for quick changes and scaling up or down or changing colors. It allows for more flexibility in that sense. And yes, so that is basically the tools we use generally. I believe, okay, before moving to the pipeline, I want to talk a little bit about where we stand. So I did mention that we are in the pre-production phase, but we work directly with creative directors, art directors who come up with the ideas, and we execute them as concept designers, and then our concepts are then moved to the next department. So this department, for example, would be 3D modeling. So for example, in the background here we see, I believe, Solid Snake. Metal Gear fans, or this, I'm not sure if this is Naked Snake or Solid Snake, but from Metal Gear series. And this design would then later be given to the 3D artist to build the model for, and then the model is put into the game, animated, and gameplay mechanics are added, and all the cool stuff later on. When it comes to the pipeline, I just want to talk about where we start, how do we go about designing our concepts generally, right? And for this little demonstration, I'm going to be using some examples from my own work that I have done previously. Everything starts from a brief or a set of specifications. This usually has to do with the story of the project that you're working on. So be it a game or a short animation or a film, always you have a story that everything else follows. So at the heart of every project, there is a story. And your superior, like your senior concept artist or the art director, will come to you with a brief. They say, hey, we need a specific character. For example, here I choose Pir Havir, which is a character. This is a character from Kurdish folklore. It's an ancient creature that devours kids. It's a cannibal. She appears as an old woman with cannibalistic features, large body, covered in traditional tattoos, and carries a pot on her back. She's scary, intimidating, but also cunning. She's the villain in the story, right? These are the type of ideas that will be conveyed to you as an artist, and then you will have to come up with these design, right? Another one would be for an environment, for example, the house of Baba Yaga. So this basically is an old wooden Russian style cabin that almost feels alive. It is the house of the infamous creature from a Slavic folklore, Baba Yaga. She's also folk like mythological creatures from Poland and Russia and some other countries. And the house appears to have chicken legs. It can walk, right? So you will get briefs like this, and you will start sitting down and just finding ideas. You have to sketch them. But just to give you an idea of where these briefs went, this, for example, is the Pir Havir that I designed based on a similar brief that I had given myself, because this is for a project that I'm leading. So it's a giant cannibal creature. So because it's a Kurdish character, I had to research the Kurdish clothing, the type of tools that she would be using in the geography, like the mountains, what type of tattoos. So like researching on the traditional tattoos of my region, because this character is specifically from Duhok. What kind of dress would she be wearing? What kind of patterns would be on it? The type of braids, every single detail, because at the end of the day, these creatures or characters have to be grounded in reality, even though they're fantastical. Our job is to make them believable for the player, for the reader, for the viewer, and that is why a huge amount of research goes into what we do. The other concept of the Baba Yaga house became something like this. So this is an old Russian wooden cabin that is walking on 4 legs and it's almost alive. And we'll come back to this design, this one as well, a little later. But where do we start? We don't start with this, right? So how do we start in that process, right? So we began by ideation, thumbnails, sketches. So we have the brief. Now we start collecting references and we sketch and sketch and sketch and try ideas based on the brief, and we do research and we talk to people. If the sources are not available, we keep modifying and finding different designs and just making variations, explore, see what works and what doesn't. And usually in this process, you're working with art directors or your senior artists, and you will be exchanging these ideas with them. Put them on the wall, they will check, and then brainstorm together. Okay, let's mix this one with this one, or this one works, this one doesn't. One thing that is very useful to keep in mind as a concept artist is you cannot get attached to your ideas, because everything at the end of the day has to serve the overall project. So we have to understand that none of this is personal. When your ideas are being rejected by the art director or the senior artist, it means that it's not fitting the project properly. So you just try again. You see where what direction to take. And this is an important attitude for concept artists to have, is to understand that we are part of a process. We are not selling the like cool visuals. We are selling ideas, and the ideas have to make sense for the project. So have an open mind when you're doing this. Be ready to scrap sketches and make new ones. And for me personally, the fun lies in the process of exploration and trying to find the design. So it's quite exciting, at least to me, and I believe most people who come into this are naturally very curious. They like to explore and find different visuals. Where do you go from here? So let's say your art director or your senior artist really like this particular design right here on the left, and then they ask you to start polishing it out, rendering it, and this is where you start painting it, adding layers, because clarity is very important. We are, like for example, in a sketch, this doesn't have enough information for 3D artists to build upon. What they need more rendering, they need forms, they need textures. So that is why we start polishing things out. We render, we paint, and then we add textures and colors and lighting. And now this is quite polished in a sense to be given to the 3D department, and they will be able to build a model off of this design, right? The last and very important step in the process or the pipeline of concept art is presentation. We are dealing with other departments, so there are people who will be using these concepts after us. This is not only for me and my art director, this is for the entire team. And that is what is our responsibility as concept artists, to make sure that our designs are very clearly communicated, that the presentation is clean, it's neat, it has all the information that the later stages are going to need. So that is why you make really neat presentations. And I personally really like this because it highlights the attractiveness of the designs as well. So it helps you sell your ideas if you have multiple and you're trying to convince the art director this is a great idea. But if you don't care about it, if you don't put time into presenting it properly, then why should others care, right? So that is why you might mix your like final render with some of the sketches to show the process, like how you arrived at the final design. You might add some of the details, like for example, this spot on her back. You can draw it separately because this will be needed later for production. You can add a little bit of like some notes here and there just to convey things to the next people who's going to touch this. Other examples of presentation from my own works. So these are, for example, this is from a project that I've been doing with another collaborator. They're building an action figure on a Kurdish character, Pir. He's a poet. So when I present these ideas to them, to the client, I always make sure that they're clearly presented. So I have them all like really nicely put in a clean presentation, even if it's simple, just putting them side by side, right? It's putting them side by side, make sure the colors are clear. There's no extra noise that kind of distracts people from viewing. You have different variations of the characters, all the thumbnails. You have some technical drawings. So this is just showing how the character is going to move, etc. And then just more from the same project, right? Now we have colored variation. So you see it has changed quite a bit. After feedback, you get feedback, you modify, and then you provide different solutions, different types of clothing, for example. Which one do they like? Which one looks better? A close-up of the portrait. And then again, for 3D models, we usually provide turnarounds because from this drawing alone, they don't know what's happening in the backside, right? Or the side view. So you provide all this information. You draw it from the back, from the front, from the side. So everything is clear for production. They don't have to keep coming asking you questions. Everything you've already laid out on a sheet. Here you have different expressions for animators because people might animate this later on, and you want to give them an idea of what this character looks like when they're happy, sad, when they're screaming, when they're laughing. Again, ideas. We are communicating ideas. So we have to really try and be very thorough in giving everything that the production pipeline needs in terms of information on the designs that we are making. So for example, here, because this is an action figure, I've provided some details on the types of joints that we might be using for the characters, right? So for example, for the arms, we will be using this type of joint so that it can rotate up and down. And for the head, for example, it's a ball joint because it has to rotate 360 degrees or 180 degrees. The different type of hands, like one hand has to be able to grab on objects or like little tools. If there is accessories that attach to the back, and we have to highlight them. Basically, and again, just to go back to the idea that we're not selling cool visuals, we are selling ideas. So clarity is really important when we are conveying ideas. Do we have any questions here? Anything that is not clear before moving on? By the way, I do understand Arabic very well. I can speak a little bit, but my Arabic is weak. So if you feel more confident asking in Arabic, I can respond in English. The only reason I don't speak Arabic is I don't want to embarrass myself because كلش تعبانة عربيتي فعدم المؤاخذة. Any questions? If no, we can move on, and then at the end we have a little space for that. No, should we move on, or should I check the chat? Maybe everything's all right. Good. Okay, then we'll move on. Here is another example of a presentation. This is the Baba Yaga house that I showed you a little earlier. So this drawing alone, it has information, but not enough, right? So if I give this to 3D artists, they don't really know what goes on the other side, right? So what do? You provide turnarounds. The house from front, from the side, the scale has to be correct. So the scale from the side and the front has to be matching so that they know, for example, exactly how to match the different side because scale is important. We provide some of the earlier designs and thumbnails so they understand the process. Then we provide the interiors because in games, usually you enter places, right? And so what goes on in the inside? And then so you give them all that information, all the different props, the type of lighting. So the main light comes from the torch right here, and then you have some secondary lightings here and there. The types of gameplay that can happen, like you can clearly see where the player can move around and walk in the space. Different, for example, if you have a major element like this chimney basically on the design of the head of a boar, then how does it look from the side? How does it look without the tusks, right? So you have to provide this information because this is an important centerpiece. There's a lot of different props in the place, so we have to also provide them, right? So there you go. We provide different types of of props that are inside the house, because all of these things have to be built. None of this comes from, vacuum. And it's our jobs as designers to provide all these details. And sometimes you can really be creative and add full details. For example, Baba Yaga is a kind of a witch characters, and I thought it's going to be cool if her door had let's say, an eye, a living eye, like a eye that moves around and looks who's outside. And then basically works like a camera would work, so she can see who's outside through that eye magically without seeing the outside, right? So you can try and present cool ideas you might have. They might not all be accepted, but that's fine. You still present them. It shows that you're thinking about it, and more often than not, your ideas will make it to the end. They will be interpreted into 3D designs and then find their way into the game. This actually is available in 3D. This was done in collaboration with a company from the UK, and they did build this entire set, and it was, I believe, for an asset store. So they were selling this as a package. So they have all of this in 3D with all the props and the design generally. Even for designs that are a bit more rough, so even if they're not rendering, clarity and presentation still is quite important. So this is how I would, for example, make a little character sheet. This character with their main vehicle, in a sense. So they have a camel that they ride. This is for a fantasy book that is kind of like Game of Thrones, but is set in a fantasy world that is inspired by the Middle East, not the West, right? So that's why the designs are all inspired by, Mesopotamian, North African culture. Here we have different characters, more characters, some environments, like a temple in the mountain, separate elements of the same environment that, artists might need, different variations, so on and so forth. But at the end, everything is clear. The visual language is cohesive. They follow the same visual language, and that's, it's quite important. Okay, now let's jump to something really exciting that I personally enjoy.
Sorry, Haron.
Please go ahead.
We have one question in the chat from Haya. She says, how can you be sure about consistency?
Consistency in presentation or design, but what can you elaborate on that a little bit, Haya? Yes, let's go back to one of those. So this is a polished version that I created for purpose presentation. But when you're designing this, you do have a lot of guides. You use guides, for example. I don't know if you see the guides, but you would be using.
Yes,
can you see them, Zainab?
Yeah,
okay. So you would be using a lot of these kind of guides, right, to make sure that everything is aligned, right? And this is one way. The other thing is just visually looking at things, making sure that anatomically everything is correct, because something that I didn't mention, but as concept artists, our main language of communication is visual, right? So we use drawing and design to do that. And that is why it's very important for us to really master those fundamentals. So these are things like anatomy, perspective, color theory, and all these things help us communicate ideas, very clearly. It's like I always compare it to the metaphor of language, because this is exactly like that. This is a visual language. So when you talk about specific language, so if you're trying to express yourself and your ideas in English or in French, whatever language, but you don't have enough confidence or fluency, you will struggle to communicate those ideas, even if you have really cool things to say. And it's the same thing with drawing. No matter how many cool ideas you have, if you're unable to put them on paper, it's always a struggle, because that's the language we communicate with other people. That's how we show them the ideas and concepts that we have in our mind. And confidence in drawing is key. And I'll get to that. I'll get to how we can basically prepare to enter this industry. But yeah, these are the major things. So one of them is, yes, you really have to be confident in your fundamentals. The other things for these turnarounds, because they're more technical, you do have to be using a lot of guides and checking again and again that the scale is correct. Like, for example, making sure the nose is really where it should be, because if not, then this becomes really confusing for 3D artists, because they literally use these turnarounds as blueprints. They bring this into 3D software, and they start blocking out based on your design. So the scale and everything is 1-to-1. And that is why, especially in turnarounds, things have to be quite meticulous. So you have to really take your time. It can be a little boring compared to other phases where you are more like free, like styling and just coming up with ideas. But it's necessary. I mean, this is part of our job, and we have to make sure that we don't just give them rough ideas and say, hey, yeah, go solve it yourself. No, it's our job to really convey that, and our responsibility to make sure that their life is easy, right? So we make their life easier, and they will love you. Like if you're working in a studio or within a group, concept artists, even animators, even programmers, they love concept artists who take their time to really clarify their ideas, right? So this has to do with everything. So you can even come up with ideas of animations or gameplay, and they love that because you're making their life easier. You become an asset. You're adding value to the company, to the project, and it makes everything a lot more fun, because at the end of the day, everything has to serve the final product, which is the game, the film, whatever it is. I hope that answers the question. If you have something else to add, please put it in the chat. For beginners, do concept artists need to be this good at coloring? Muhammad is asking. Concept artists are expected to have good knowledge of fundamentals in general. And one of the main fundamentals of art is color and light. So yes, it is important. You do have to be able to render to a decent degree, like convey color and light and different light scenarios, because this is something that is required from us as concept artists, right? If you have good design skills and you can sketch them very well, that is valuable. You're selling something good, and people want that. They would hire you for that. But then there's somebody else who can do that, but is also good at coloring them. Then he has an edge over somebody who doesn't. So yes, definitely, it's a very important skill to have, and is expected from concept artists to know that. And please, if I'm moving too fast, slow me down. I guess we can take a little pause if something needs to happen. Okay, so moving on to just some major examples that I personally find inspiring, or just to show you how something that we all recognize was at some point only an idea on paper, right? So I put the xenomorph here because it is one of the coolest designs, in my opinion, that was ever made in any entertainment design in general. So this is the xenomorph, or the alien from Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, and it's one of the coolest sci-fi films. And it features this creature that is an alien that comes from outer space. And how do you design something that looks alien, right? But at the same time, it looks familiar, because this is something else that a lot of junior or people who are new to concept art get wrong. We think, like as beginners, we think that everything that we create has to be 100% original, 100% unique, and something that nobody has seen before. But if what you're creating is 100% unique, first of all, that's an impossible task, because we are building upon thousands of years of civilization and history, and an entire natural world that has been here for hundreds of millions of years, not billions of years, right? So it's an impossible task to ask your mind or your imagination to come up with something that's entirely yours. So this is where the idea of inspiration comes in. And in fact, most of the designs that we find compelling as viewers, as consumers, are grounded in reality. They remind us of things that we already know, things that we're already familiar with. And this creates a sense of familiarity, that we don't have to think about what this design is. We know it just by the silhouette, the design, right? And one great example, as I said, is Giger's alien, right? So this is an alien creature, but when you look at this, you know exactly that this is a predator. This is a creature that hunts. Why? Because they have a very aggressive shape. They look like insects, and we all recognize insects, right? And it also is very agile, like a feline, like a panther or a cat. And combining these things, right? So combining the idea of an insect and a cat, and then this kind of mix that with biomechanics, which is something that H.R. Giger came up with, is when he mixes these almost mechanical looking elements with organic stuff, then you come up with something that is truly alien and horrific in a sense. So these that you see on the left, on the right side, these are designs by H.R. Giger. He was the artist that was hired by Ridley Scott to design the alien. And Ridley Scott hired him specifically because he already had this style of biomechanics, where he was mixing these organic forms with mechanical stuff. And he came up with really bizarre looking, really alien stuff, which gave us this iconic characters that is one of the best designs that has been done in the entertainment film industries to date, right? It's still being used in more recent films. There are toys, games, comic books, a lot of things made surrounding this character. Why? Because it is a good design. And again, if you think about it, the inspirations are quite grounded. You know, you have something that is very humanoid because it has a face, it has hands, but at the same time, it is almost like a cat because it can climb places. And there is also a hard shell like insects or crabs. And combining these elements, now you have something alien. So this is relevant. We understand as viewers what this is without him telling us what it is, right? So showing this to us, we understand this is an aggressive, threatening creature that is about to kill you, right? So grounding your ideas in reality is quite important. Here's another guy, Darth Vader. You've seen a lot of Star Wars stuff that I've used in this presentation, and it's because I'm obsessed with it. I love Star Wars. I love George Lucas, Walt McQuarrie, and it's a big inspiration behind what I do. And then again, we all know and love this iconic character that has become the visual prototype of a villain, right? So when we think of probably the most influential villain in the history of films, Darth Vader is probably the number one guy. And it's for a reason, right? So when you look at this, again, it's very human. It has a silhouette of a human. He is somewhat human, but there is a very menacing feeling to it. And that comes from the design of the helmet, the dark triangular silhouette. It's a very strong shape, and the entire black uniform with a red, usually is a color that we associate with danger or threat, lightsaber. So this is a very visually strong idea, and it's stuck with viewers for decades. I mean, Star Wars is probably it is the number one franchise that films, comics, TV shows, animations, video games come out every year inspired by this franchise, right? So where did he bring this design from, right? So this is Rolf McQuarrie, by the way. He is the guy behind most of the visual language of Star Wars, and he is one of the earliest concept artists. He's one of the main guys when it comes to this industry. And he basically, because if you know Star Wars a little bit, it is heavily inspired uh, by mythology and also by World War II events. So the Empire that is this villain. I'm not gonna spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen the film, but the Empire is this evil entity, galactic entity that's trying to take over the world in an authoritarian dictatorship regime, right? And this was heavily inspired by Nazi Germany. So to design this guy, Rolf McQuarrie borrowed the German helmet of World War II soldiers, right? And then he combined it with a skull indicating death, right? So death and evil. And then he comes up with this iconic combination that stays in the minds of audience for decades afterwards. And again, it's a very simple design in its core, right? So two major elements, black silhouette, kind of robotic. Colors are important, again, this striking lightsaber, the triangular kind of silhouette. Triangles usually indicate sharpness or edges that kind of make us uncomfortable. Combining all these elements, now you have this iconic characters, right? So this is just trying to get into the mind of people who design these characters and why they work. Because at the end of the day, all of this has to do with our psychology as the audience, as the player, how these visuals make us feel. Because we all watch films, we all play video games, we read, and when we engage in these entertainment projects, we are moved by the stories, we are moved by the visuals, the sounds. And when it comes to design, there is things that you can learn in the process to be able to manipulate these emotions and feelings in a good way, because as designers, we have to be able to use those tools that we have to convey our ideas. To come to a more modern example, this is Kratos from 2018 God of War. We all probably grew up and on the God of War games. We love the character. And this is the original Kratos from the original games, right? This is the character from the game, the final render. And then we can see many different variations. So these are only a few, but probably there are hundreds, if not thousands, of designs done in the art department before getting to this. This one is done by Rafael Grassetti. He's a Brazilian artist from Santa Monica. But the art department has done hundreds of different variations inspired by Norse mythology to come up with the final design. So you do different versions, different weapons, different styles, different body types. And something that I didn't mention earlier in the pipeline, a big part of our job is to research. So we gather hundreds of references. We try to get inspired. We look at similar projects, things that inspire us that are kind of in line with our current project. And all of this is to kind of spark our visual library to come up with cool ideas. Because again, don't rely on yourself alone to come up with these things. It's not fair to you, because it's an impossible task. It's impossible to ask from your imagination, no, I'm going to do this on my own because I want to be original. This is original. This is great design. It's original. It's instantly recognizable, but it is heavily grounded in real history and real lore and real clothing. So this is clearly, when you look at this, you immediately understand that this is from Norse. This is Viking style of design. Why? Because they studied that. They studied how Vikings behaved, how they lived, what kind of clothing they wore, what type of weapons, tools, textures they used. And this, at the end, gives us something that is very grounded, is very believable and realistic. There's another question from Ahmed. And which one do you prefer more based on his personality? And what would you believe they were designed? You're referring to Kratos. That's an interesting one because the original games. This is going to be a little detour, but I think it's an interesting conversation. The original game was quite different because it was about this demigod that was purely an anti-hero, right? So he was filled with rage, and he was on a mission to avenge his family. A little bit of spoilers for anybody who's not familiar with the franchise of God of War. So the design also reflected the story, the character, but also the type of game, because the old God of War was a hack and slash type of game. It's a kind of a farther camera where you're just slashing your way into enemies and moving through environments. The newer game, the 2018 reboot, brings us to an older Kratos where he's almost kind of retired right now. He has a family, he's calmer, he's wiser. And all of that, again, the story is reflected in the character. He's a lot calmer, he's more robust, he is a bit heavier because he's older. And that is why they had to, and also the type of game, the gameplay changed from hack and slash to something a bit more dramatic, something a bit more cinematic. And all of these decisions, again, coming back to that brief idea, how you have briefs, inspire the final result, which is this design. So which one I personally prefer? I really like both of them because they are different things, So just to wrap on this slide.
We have
Go
a
ahead.
question in the chat.
Okay, let's check.
Also from Haya. She says, where do you go for research usually? Older games for the same subject or books?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually something that's depending on the project you're doing. So if you're working in a studio or working on something that is more like a personal project, then you got to rely on research work that is done kind of outside of other similar projects, because you do want to make your own original designs and project, right? A lot of times, almost every game has a few games that we use as inspiration. Like this is the closest game to what we're making, or this is the closest film to what we're making. And we can use that as a mode, as an anchor that this is the type of style we're after. But every project at the end of the day is, starts from the ground up. So you build your own visuals, you build your own language, visual language, and you move from there. So where do you go for research? Yes. So if you're building something like God of War in the Norse mythology, then you go and read a lot on Norse mythology. So you'll read about the cultures of Scandinavia and the types of like tools and clothing and facial structures, lifestyle, because all these things at the end of the day inform the final design. There's a lot of books, you can watch documentaries. And when it comes to visual resources, Pinterest is a great place. You can download hundreds of different images and then make mood boards. I've actually prepared something a little earlier. I did not include, but I might bring it into Photoshop. And just a screenshot of one of my mood boards, and you can see like how we usually arrange our reference boards. But yeah, research is just general. So just be curious, because I think you cannot be in this industry if you're not curious. So if you're not interested on these subject matters, so naturally when we are given a brief, there is a tendency to understand more about that, right? So for example, when I talked about Bir Hadir, this character, let me see. Yes, this character, I had to do a lot of research on the specific things that were used in this region, right? And we don't have a lot of resources online. So what do? You go to museums, you go to places where they might have what you're looking for. You try to find resources on the type of tattoos, the type of hairstyle, the type of cloth, like the fabric that one would be using from this region, the type of patterns, the different objects that one might use. So all these things come from research, right? So informed by the information that you gather and then bring them into your design. And this helps us come up with our own unique characters. If you're doing this based on somebody, like if you're using, let's say, another game character as your inspiration, you don't have any of the background information that comes with research, because not only visuals inform, but also lifestyle, geography, environments. All these things affect how a character would walk, how they would dress, how they would behave. Is it a character that lives in the desert? Is it a hot climate? Is it a snowy climate? All these things affect how they would be clothing, how they would behave, how they would be hunting, what kind of weapons or tools they would be using. So it's not only about visuals, it's about understanding the specifications of the task that you're given, right? Fundamentals of art, I see everyone learning. Yes, we will get to the fundamentals of art at the end of the session, because I do have a section dedicated to that. It's quite an important subject. Yes. Yeah, to getting to this slide, this is something very important, really important for us to understand, and that is the difference between concept art and illustration. A lot of times, and this is more frequent that you would think, people or like junior artists who are thinking of getting into the concept art industry, they don't really understand what concept art is. They mistake between concept art and illustration, right? So before going there, can anybody tell me like what the major differences are between the two? Do you have any ideas? We can have a conversation here before moving on to actually explaining what's happening. So for example, here, both of these are designs, drawings, but this one is considered an illustration or a key art, while this is considered concept art. Tell a story, okay? Yes, that's part of it. It's to tell a story, but not idea. Kind of, yes. It's definitely part of the solution. Any ideas? Anything else? Okay, Mina says, I think illustration art is like only one image, while concept is the idea of the whole story. Okay. There will be no illustration without concept art. That's true. Yes, if you want to speak. Yes, so if you want, you can unmute yourself, so it doesn't have to be in chat. I think this is quite important, because this is where one of the biggest misconceptions in our industry comes, right? Is we don't differentiate between key art and concept art, but key art, illustration. So if anybody wants to jump in, give some ideas, let's have a conversation. Yes, Sophia Swan wants to talk.
Hello.
Hello.
السلام عليكم أستاذ هارون
سلام.
طبعا شرف نتكلم مع حضرتك. I will speak
شكرا.
in English if it's okay with you. I think the difference is concept art is about discovering and find many ideas and combine them to get a result to the final idea of the, let's say, the director and the producer of the game, if we talk about the games, for example. And the illustration is the final result to, let's say, to impress the audience and everyone else. I think this is the difference. I hope so. So it's to you to explain if it's right or wrong.
Yes, that's a good explanation to the difference. Anybody else wants to tune in? But the reason why I'm presenting this as a question is because it is, I mean, even now, as we are having a conversation, there are different answers coming in, and this tells us that there really is a little bit of confusion, because at the end of the day, they're both art and design, right? They're both done by artists, and sometimes it's the same artist. Like the same artist who does concept art can also do illustrations and marketing art and such, right? Omnia says concept art includes an introduction to the character as well as the journey of making it, while an illustration is usually a scene that describes the game. Concept might be for producers and illustrations for audience. Exactly. So that is, if you want to have like a rule of thumb about what the difference is, and keep this in mind. This is like a rule of thumb, right? So concept art is not a final product. It is part of a pipeline. It is made in the production pipeline of a studio or a project. And usually it is not shown to the audience. It is not what the final the people who buy the project see. While illustration, so this includes promotional art, key art, these kind of like cool visuals, these are consumed directly by the audience. So what you see on the right side here, this is a piece of marketing art. This is not concept art. This was done to promote the game. So this was consumed directly by the audience. It was put on Steam and website and books and banners. So this is it's really cool visuals, and it's supposed to kind of captivate people and get them interested in the project. And that is why, as concept art, this is not very useful. Like if you present this as concept art to your teammates, it's not really helping a lot, because the character is in motion. There is a lot going on. If I'm the 3D artist doing Kratos, then I'm not understanding exactly what's going on the different sides, on what's happening on the back, or what is, because the scale is off, the camera is distorted. But that's not the point of this. The point is to have a cool visual with cool colors and different elements to sell the idea. And this is what you see on covers of books, illustrations of books, the marketing material, Steam capsules, banners, promotional art. That is illustration. It is made directly for the audience, while concept art is made for the production pipeline. It's made for artists, for programmers, for developers. That is the main difference. So if you're ever not sure, think, okay, is this something that was done for other artists and developers? Then it's concept art. And that's why it's usually kind of boring. Like, you see, it's just a standing guy. He's not doing anything cool. He's not killing anything. He's not moving around. Why? Because we are trying to convey how this guy looks. We're not trying to sell the idea, like, look how cool this is. This is still cool. I think this is amazing. But usually we put them in standard poses, a T pose or just standing, and then you'll draw the same guy from behind because you want to understand what's going on the other sides. And you do iterations, different versions, like, what kind of silhouettes can you give him by adding or removing elements? And at the end, it is a concept art, concept as an idea. This is us as concept designers conveying an idea to the next person in the production pipeline, while an illustration is done directly for the consumer, right? So that is why studios would not use this for their marketing. They will put this on ArtStation. They will make an art book for people who are interested in the production, right? That's why a lot of us, maybe I myself, I have a big library of art of books, like the games and stuff, and because I'm interested in that. But people who play the game, most of them, like I would say 95% of people who play God of War, they have no idea about the concept art that went into the making of Kratos. They're not even interested. It's not for them to know. But they have seen the other one. They have seen the one on the right because it was made to attract them to buy the game, right? So that is the main difference between the two. And so when we are building our portfolios, when we are conveying designs, we have to make sure that our ideas fall into the one on the left side. We are conveying clear ideas for production. Their job is not to be cool and sexy, like, to put on, like, look how cool this drawing is. No, it's does it convey the idea? Does it convey the specifications that were given to you, or the brief that was given to you by your director or art director? So this is the main difference. If you have this, the one on the left side, in your concept art portfolio, you're likely to get hired because you understand the industry. And just understanding this difference already gives you an edge, because you have no idea how many people, how many junior artists don't understand this. So they have portfolio filled with key art, right? So things that show a large vista with a tiny character and stuff like that. And it doesn't convey design, right? It's not really helping the production. So they rarely get hired. They want people who can do this, who can do variations. Give me 10 variations of his axe, 10 variations of the belt he is wearing, 10 variations of the costume. This is what a concept artist does. Give ideas. So I hope this clarified things. But yeah, so the ideas that you guys presented, like one of them is for producers, directors, and production. One of them is for audiences. That's all true, as valid. Mina says, I personally think quite the opposite. I think concept art is cooler because the person is going to focus on the small. Yes, so for people who are into design, like us, we do find this very cool. I myself, I enjoy this to death. I love it. I love consuming it, looking at it. It inspires me. It gives you an idea on how they reach at the final design, like, you know, so you learn a lot in the process, but the average consumer doesn't really care, you know. So all the millions of people who bought and played God of War have no interest in knowing how he was designed. It's not for them, right? It's just totally valid. Our job is to produce the product, the game, and not to show our art to everybody else.
We have two more
But also,
questions in the chat.
please, let me, maybe I haven't scrolled. I don't see anything else.
There's one from Benin. She says, do you draw all the movements, or do you just draw the basics and move them using AI?
It depends on what is required of you. Sometimes, usually what you do, you build these characters in concept art, you give them to 3D department, they will build a 3D model, and then they will give it to the rigging people, they will rig it, give it like a bone system, and then animators will be moving the final 3D characters, right? Sometimes if something isn't clear, animators might come back to you as the concept artist and ask you, hey, this is your concept. How does he move this specific thing, or how does he do this specific thing? So you might have to go in again and then give him more sketches or ideas. That is why concept artists are in the pre-production, but we are also active throughout the project, because ideas develop, questions come, and we are constantly conveying our concepts to the rest of the production team. AI, using AI to move characters, it's have no idea if that's actually being implemented in the industry, because it doesn't really understand what the character needs, and it doesn't really serve the final product, because usually these are used game engines are used to move these, and for that we have animators, or we do motion capture to capture real actors moving. It's a totally different process. So it is not really something that concept artists do. It's not our job. Sometimes you have to clarify, but we don't do that. So we only provide still images, drawings, designs to the rest of the team. Yeah. Should we move on? There are no questions on the previous subjects of difference between concept art and illustration. Yeah.
There's
Anything
one
else?
more
Because I don't
question.
see.
Yeah.
Please.
From Muhammad, he says, concept might be for the producers and illustrations for the audience, like for marketing. That being said, who is responsible for making those illustrations?
Yeah, it's the marketing department. So you have people who are designers or artists who specifically do that. So these are different fields you can enter, and that is why if you're trying to get into this industry, it's fine if you want to do illustrations and key art, but you got to understand that that is what you're doing, because then you have to design your portfolio for that type of thing. Like I'm an illustrator. I design key art and cool stuff for marketing of games, right? But if you're a concept artist, then your portfolio has to reflect that. And illustrators have to have a far better understanding of rendering, color and light, realism, because What you create is consumed directly by the audience, and that is why it has to be extremely, extremely accurate and cool. So the lighting has to be dramatic, and it has to have this epic feeling because you're selling this idea, right? But as concept artists, it doesn't matter much. If you're conveying the idea to the production team, that's enough. With that being said, we still need to have, good understanding of rendering and color and just anatomy and stuff. But that job is, two-folded or three-folded for the illustrator, because the 3D artist is also good in anatomy and light and all those things. So he understands if something is literally off, slightly off, right? But the audience is not that forgiving. If something is off or wanky, it's like, what are you doing? It's like throwing them off, and that's, you don't want to do that because you're trying to market the game or the project to them. So the job of an illustrator is to create scenes, specific scenes, really well. While concept artists, we develop assets, individual pieces of the project. So this is, there are two different departments, two different fields, two different ways to get there. With that being said, both of them use drawing and painting as the medium to convey ideas. So a lot of times a concept artist is also an illustrator, or an illustrator is also a concept artist, because you can easily move between the two. But it just makes your life just that little bit more kind of difficult, Yes, Flight Dragon is a huge art book collector. Yeah, me too, man. It sometimes becomes an addiction. It's not good for your wallet, but it's good for your imagination. So gotta sometimes trade off. Yes, moving to the next part is, okay, so if you're into concept art, you want to pursue this, what do you need? The first thing that you need is, as mentioned earlier in the chat, is fundamental skills. We talked briefly about using art and design, like art and visual language, to convey ideas. So if you don't have a good grip on your fundamentals, it is impossible to confidently convey your ideas. You might be able, you might try, but I think all of us who have like tried drawing, you sometimes get to that place where you have a really cool idea, but you just can't put it on paper. When you put your pencil down, it's not what you're thinking about, and that's not because you're not, you just cannot. Is because you're lacking the language to do that, and the language is fundamentals of art. So this, if you're into character like concept art and creature concept art, then figure drawing and anatomy is extremely important. You have to have a good understanding of anatomy of animals, humans, the skeletal system, the muscles, how they work, because when you have that understanding, then you can create characters in different poses, different body types, different actions, and that is one thing covered, right? Then you have perspective, because everything is that we see and we convey falls into a three-dimensional world, and understanding perspective allows us to put our characters and environments in an accurate depiction of our world, and that is why perspective is important. Then we have color and light. So this is where rendering and coloring and all these like a bit more intricate things come into play. It helps us identify forms. It helps us create moods, because different lightings give us different moods. Different colors can have different psychological effects on audiences. So that is another fundamental that you really have to be investing in. Another one is composition, which is a bit more advanced because it has a lot to do with intuition, but there's also ways to learn this, right? So composition is a more advanced form of a fundamental, and usually very junior artists don't particularly get into this immediately, because the other ones are definitely more priority. But composition is what creates interest. It's where do you place your character? How do you divide the elements in your design, right? This has to do with making compelling art, things that audiences can find cool, usually without understanding why, but our eyes do understand, our minds understand, but maybe like practically we don't, but we feel it. We feel when something is cool. Everybody can agree that, let's say, one of the, so did it cut when I was talking about composition, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so just moving on, you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. Moving from there, there is also shape language. So this is, again, similar to color and composition. Has to do with using shapes, like very simple geometric shapes, to create compelling design. So again, this has to do with just design theory in general. These are things that if you're thinking about getting into design in general, or concept design specifically, are very important skills to have. No matter how many cool ideas you have, if you cannot convey them, sadly, it's difficult to sell your ideas, right? And that is what we do as concept artists. We sell ideas. They hire us so that we can come up with cool designs and ideas. And if we cannot put them into, something that can be communicated, then it's almost impossible to do that. So that is why, fundamental skills are the main thing to focus on if you're getting into this field. So how do you, one way to actually learn this, is you take, get books or courses on the specific subjects. So if you want to learn like figure drawing and anatomy, then you find that those types of classes or courses, or you do it on your own. Same thing for perspective and other things. There are many books, and I'll be happy actually later, Zainab, I'll share with you a document with a list of resources, both for fundamentals and also for concept art, that you can share with the attendees, and just for anybody who's interested into this. Where do you start? How do you learn? Studying master copies and references. So this is just studying from real life, right? So if there is an artist that you particularly like their style or feel inspired by, then copy their style, copy their art, because by copying, by doing designs after them, you're picking a lot of different things from their work, right? And try to do this thoughtfully. So when you're drawing, like when you're copying a master, think, what am I trying to get out of this master study? Am I trying to improve my color? Am I trying to improve my anatomy and figure drawing? Am I trying to improve my composition? When you have this clear goal of what I want to extract from this master copy, then when you're studying it, your focus is there. Ignore the figure drawing, focus only on color, right? And this is just to make it easier on your mind to observe the information, because again, if you're trying to do everything at once, it's still useful. But a tip that I would give is try to tell yourself, like, give yourself a task, like, I want to get this specific thing from this artist, and then do the study. Exercises for improvement, just generally, this is something that I really like and enjoy. It's called, expanding a visual library. And if you're in concept art or design fields in general, you gotta have a very wide imagination. And imagination comes from our experiences as individuals, all the different things that we've seen. So the very good concept artists, usually they're very curious. They want to learn about different things. They have seen a lot of films, or they played a lot of games, or they're into nature, or they're inspired by history, this and that. And all these things, like, for example, people who have grown up with entertainment products like films and games, like if you grew up like seeing Lord of the Rings, Ghost in the Shell, Blade Runner, Alien, Star Wars, then you already have seen so many cool designs, and this gives you a big visual library. But if you don't already have this, or if you want to improve on this, then what do? There is a really cool exercise that I've recently actually worked on with a student, is to give yourself different subject matters from real life, and work on them every week or every day. For example, 1 week you decide to draw different types of trees, just trees, right? So you you gather references, you draw as many trees as possible. Then next week you move on to something else. So this week you're drawing, let's say, birds or mammals or a specific culture like ancient Rome, like 2 different tools, or let's say European castles or whatever. Just give yourself a subject matter and just sketch many different sketches of that kind of subject in a single week. And what this does, and don't design anything, just copy it. What this does is it's expanding your visual library. So when you're coming to design a character or an environment, you have a lot of things that you can borrow from because you've already seen them, you've already studied them, right? So this is something really cool, and it's fun because every week you're learning something new. You know, when you're, let's say, studying different types of, let's say, felines like cats and lions, whatever, you're learning things about them, and it's just fun. I personally really enjoy that. But once you have all of that set, then you got to build a portfolio, right? So you cannot get into the industry without having a portfolio to showcase that you can bring value to these projects and studios and people that are working in the industry. The portfolio has to be catered towards junior position. So if you're a beginner, don't copy things that senior artists in the industry do, right? Do things that are usually requested from junior artists to do. And how do you understand what that is? You can go on ArtStation or other platforms that are hiring people, and when they have junior concept artists, check the requirements of the job, see what they're seeking, right? So usually for junior artists, they want people who can do a lot of variations. If you're a junior artist getting on, let's say, a game like God of War, they're not going to ask you to design Kratos. You know, that's reserved for the big guys, people with experience of like 10, 15 years in the industry or even more, because he's the main character. He's going to be on the screen the most. Everybody's going to see him. He has to be perfect. What do junior artists do? We will be given smaller tasks like fill this environment with cool props. So you will have to go and learn about Norse mythology and Scandinavian history and see what kind of props, different like mundane stuff, like things like pottery, cooking stuff, I don't know, cutting wood, things that they use. And they will ask you to design, let's say, tens of or hundreds of props for these environments. Or they might ask you to do variations of certain things. Like, we have designed this shield, go and make 10 different variations. Or go make 10 different variations of this sword or this gun or this whatever, right? Usually, this is what junior artists do. So we support the more senior artists in providing variations, in doing the more boring stuff. So they might ask us to do turnarounds, right? Because the senior artists, they are usually occupied with designing the broader visual elements of the of the game or the project. So they give the more kind of labor-heavy things to the junior artists, which is, I don't know, it's fair because we have less experience. Then after usually 4 or 5 years, you move into like to become a concept artist, and then you become a senior concept artist, and then from there there's art directors. But if you're applying for jobs, you have to target junior concept artists because that's where most of us are, when it comes to like trying to get into the industry. This is our first job in the industry. So focus on that. Focus on showing them that you can be an asset. There is not much they can get out of a landscape shot, but there's a lot that they can get out of a breakdown of a character, right? So they understand that you understand the process. They understand that you understand what other artists need in the pipeline, and they understand that you can provide these things. So if you understand this specific thing alone, you already have an edge over most other people who are trying to apply for jobs. So this is something important. I mean, it makes sense, right? They ask simple, like direct things, provide those things. Let your portfolio reflect that. Let them see that you understand the process. And if you haven't had the chance to work on real life projects, then give yourself projects. For example, treat your own personal projects like real life, pretend that like they're real projects. So for example, you can say, okay, I want to make concept art for a pretend kind of game. Let's say okay, this game takes place in, I don't know, ancient Mesopotamia. It's about a little girl that does this and that, and it takes place in this or that place. So by giving yourself all these specifications, you can start designing different environments, different props, different characters, variations, but all of them are within the same project. And it almost looks like you're doing this for a real project. And this, it forces you to be consistent. So when you make one character, then the environment and the props, all of them have to follow the same visual style. It's a great practice to just become better at consistency when we talked about that. But also it just shows that, you understand that we as concept artists are working to fulfill the needs of a project. It's not about what we personally want to do. It's about what the project requires from us. So yes, these are some tips for portfolio. And I believe with that, we come to the conclusion of this session. Now we can have question and answers, and thank you very much for listening. I'm really happy to have been able to just talk about concept art with you, because it's a really important aspect of the industry, and I believe that there's a lot of young talent that want to get into this field. And so please go ahead if you have any questions, if you want to strike a conversation, just talk about random things or things we've already covered.
If anyone wants to speak, feel free to unmute and speak.
So we already have the one that I see in the chat. So there is a question from Benin. It says, when you usually create a new character, do you rely on your imagination, or do you look references and combine them to come up with a final correct character? It's a combination of both, right? So you build a reference board for yourself. You bring different references from different places, and that is to help you design something that is grounded, right? You cannot come up with, let's say, let me give you an example. For example, if you're designing a character that takes place, like let's say it's an officer or a soldier from World War II, he's American, right? If let's say you're working for an FPS shooter game, right? The World War II theme, why would you try to imagine what a World War II soldier looks like when they exist? So you go and gather references. You see what type of clothing they use, what type of tools, what kind of guns and weapons. So you have all that information in front of you, and then you combine that with your knowledge of design and composition and the things that we talked about, and you create a compelling character that fits the story. Remember, the story and specifications come above everything else. So you combine those things, right? So a good research plus your own imagination and unique taste, then we have a design to present.
We have a few questions in chat, but Hussein said that he wants to speak, so
Please.
First of all, I'm really have a pleasure to meet you today and to see this amazing work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hussein.
You're welcome. So my question is about a project I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
The problem we have is the whole game is a gray scale. So everything is a gray, a dark gray, light gray, and so on. And we're having problem to make the enemies and the main character and the side character of the story more interesting because of the less color.
Yeah, that's definitely that's the entire question, or did I miss something?
Yeah, pretty much.
That is definitely why, as a concept artist, a good understanding of values, because again, a fundamental skill is color and light, and light covers how we perceive things when light hits them, and color is more about hue. So to be able to create things that are compelling in black and white, you have to have a good understanding of values, and it's absolutely possible. There are many examples of good films and even video games that are in black and white. I mean, most of the films before color, film was available, were in black and white, and they're beautiful compositionally. And actually, a lot of directors prefer that because it removes the layer of color, and you have a little less elements to play with, and make cool stuff with. So one exercise would be, I would say, go ahead and study films or filmmakers who had good compositions back in the day. So, for example, one such example would be Ingmar Bergman. He's a Swedish director, and he made films in black and white, but the compositions are strikingly beautiful. Everything is clear. The contrast, like you mentioned, like you understand, like using light backgrounds to push things forward, or dark backgrounds to push lighter objects forward. The usage of light. Study film noir, so the noir era of films, things like Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. He used lighting and black and white film beautifully. Just study these and see how they solve that problem. Because again, we are trying to convey a story through visuals, right? It's a frame at the end of the day. How do you make a cool composition when you don't have color? It's absolutely possible. There is a lot of great art that has been done in black and white. So I would say, try to study those, make copies of them. If you're a concept artist, make copies of black and white compositions to try and have basically train your eye on understanding values better. And when you have that, you can easily make your compositions without color. It actually, for me personally, it's easier. And that is why in a lot of my process, I paint in black and white first, then I add color, because it allows me to focus on value first. Because if the value is good, the design is good. Color adds to it. But if the values are bad, then no matter how cool your colors are, the design is not going to be as good. Values are a lot more important in conveying designs to audiences. And by values, I mean black and white, different tones, forms. So yeah, that would be a tip.
Thank you pretty much. You really helped me with that. And thank you for writing the movie name. I really appreciate that.
Yes, I will. I can try and add that. I'll take a note so not to forget, but I will try to add that into the supplementary document that I will send to Zainab, and then she can forward it to you guys.
I think she already did in the chat.
Oh, she did? Perfect.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
mentioned the Citizen
Great.
Kane.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All the document that you will send me, I will forward to everyone in email, because I don't have a way of contact for everyone else. So make sure to check your emails after the session.
Okay.
We have a question from Haya. She said, where did you study animation? I think she meant art in general.
Yeah, so I studied fine arts in The Hook, in the Fine Arts Institute. And then I did animation in Ankara. So that was because I was quite inspired by, animated films and stuff, and I wanted to study that. And back then, we didn't have any academic programs to provide animation locally. So I did that in Ankara. But then I decided not to do animation. So I went there to become an animator, but then I discovered there that, actually I'm into concept art more than animation. So I didn't continue. I focused on concept art while I was doing that. Then we have a question, please.
Does a concept artist should also know how to animate?
No, not at all. It's totally different.
For expressing the emotions of the character, like, is he right-handed or left-handed? How does he move? How does he walk?
Usually not. No, usually not. I don't know any concept. There are people who do it as a hobby, but you're not expected. I think you will never be asked to do animation if you're a concept artist. If you are interested and you wanna expand on your ideas by providing animations, great, because you're making everybody else's lives easier. But other than that, focusing on design, like the fundamentals, would help you more to get jobs in concept industry, because there's no requirement for animation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then there is one from Benin. If you had to create a character but had no idea what they are like or what they look like, and only had certain event to rely on, what would you do? Give yourself kind of fake specifications. Like if you don't have any ideas, borrow ideas from literature. There is thousands of stories and books that you can just take. For example, let's say, okay, I want to read let's say Huckleberry Finn, by Mark Twain, and then I'm gonna design the main characters how he describes them. It already in the book. You have the descriptions of all the characters. Now you can interpret them your way. If you don't have it, if you want to make your own original characters, then give yourself a fact sheet, right? Who is my character? How old are they? Where do they live? What is their background? Where do they come from? What is their attitude? So all these things, write them down and design based on that. But you have to have a list of specifications. Otherwise, you can draw anything, and you're not guided by a specific brief, and that can be a little distracting. So I would say if you don't have a brief, give yourself one. That's when I said you can give yourself kind of pretend projects, and this would be one of them. Pretend that this is for a game or a film, and this is what your art director requires from you. I hope that answers the question. What do you think about concept art in the Iraqi market? There's quite a few good artists. There are friends that I've met in Baghdad and other places that are in the industry, and I think a lot of them are working either in local game studios or animation studios. So again, because it's a newer industry, there is an increasing kind of interest in it, but it's not as wide as places with more established industries. But I think for what we have good, solid artists.
Yeah, I think I can add to that a little also.
Please.
I think a lot of upcoming artists, they do not necessarily work in game studios here. They reach out to global studios that they can work with. So there are artists, but the demand is still limited here because it is an emerging field.
Yeah, though it is increasing. Like I believe every year we have a few emerging studios, which is very exciting. BGL is definitely contributing to that as well, because they are raising awareness, educating. So their efforts combined with ours, with other game developers, independent artists, we're basically building the block of an industry. And in a few years, there's going to be more demand. We will need more artists, more developers. So yeah, it's only growing. It's only becoming better. I do have a question. When you want to design a character that is uncanny but simple at the same time, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Yeah, that's a very design-heavy question. It's a bit more challenging. It's definitely more challenging. I would say if this is something you're interested in, try to study artists or characters that exist in that style in films or games, and go back to their concept artists and see how they did that, how they approached that. So one great example that I personally love is Pennywise from It. And the designer is somebody called Carlos Guante, and he's a great concept and creature designer that comes up with all these bizarre creatures that are very sometimes unsettling, like to the mind, but it comes from a good understanding of human psychology and combining different elements of what makes something uncanny or a bit bizarre. So that's something I would do. Just go back to the masters and see how they did it. Mina says, I do have a question on how long does it take for someone to actually make it in work? It depends on how much time you put into it, to be honest. It is a bit of a competitive industry. There's a lot of young people who want to become concept artists. So if this is something you're really into it, you got to take this structurally. You cannot have it as a hobby and then hope that someday you get into the industry. This is just the reality of things, because a lot of people are trying. So if you're spending, let's say, 1 hour a day, somebody else is spending 5 or 6 or 7. So the more time you put into learning fundamentals, the more time you put into building a solid portfolio, the easier you can do this. So it's a question of time, but also good structure. So if you're lost in how to learn, consider investing in courses, right? So there's a lot of online resources from Learn Square, from Gumroad, from Schoolism. I have a course in fundamentals of figure drawing and anatomy, but there are many places where you can actually get somebody to walk you through the process if you want to save time and just have a structured way of learning. But yeah, it depends solely on what you do. It could be between 2 years to 5 years, depends on how much time you can allocate to it. But thankfully, we live in the age of internet, and the resources are endless. So yeah.
I think Sophia has a question.
Please.
Mr. Haron, I have a question. If I join a team as a junior concept arts, let's say for designing character, is it acceptable if I give ideas, suggest ideas about the character? Because I already have, let's say, seen many references, and I already have many inspiration. Is it acceptable, or I only have to translate their vision, the leader vision? I just wanted to know that.
It depends on the project. It depends on the studio. But usually, the game industry, it's a creative industry, right? So a lot of conversations do happen. So when we come up, let's say with the narrative or the story, there's usually a lot of meetings about, okay, what this character is like. And as a concept artist, our job is to bring ideas to the table. So having that as a background is actually very, very useful. So it's a plus to have. But yeah, usually there is already a script or a narrative created by the creative director or the writer, and everybody else tries to bring that vision to life, right? But again, it's not just you got to do this and do this, nothing else. No, the nature of our job is to actually propose ideas, right? So it's very natural, and it's a strong it's a strong asset to have, actually.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Shiruski asks, thank you for the session. I have a question. How to build a portfolio if the only social media platform that being used is Instagram, for example? Yeah, Instagram is an okay portfolio, but it's not the industry standard. So if you want to build a professional portfolio, ArtStation is great. That is where exactly. So ArtStation is where the industry goes to find concept artists, 3D artists, technical artists, all the art directors, the studios, and other industry people are sitting there, right? So if you want to have a professional portfolio where you can send to art directors, ArtStation is the one. I think sometimes if you send them an Instagram, it's not a good image, because it's a social media. Some people accept that, it's fine, but it's not ideal for viewing, let's say, images, right? If I want to zoom in or see your designs, it's really, Instagram doesn't allow that. While ArtStation is made specifically for that. So ArtStation, Behance is okay, DeviantArt, right? Behance is more for graphic design. DeviantArt is a little bit outdated, but ArtStation is the industry standard. So no doubt about it. Make a portfolio. Some little tips on that. Include in your portfolio only your design work. Don't include your studies, things that you do to learn. Don't put them, because you want to sell the idea that I'm a designer. They don't want to see that, okay, you're a student. Everybody's learning, right? But don't put student stuff. Don't put studies that you've done on other or copies of other people or fan art, because then it confuses art directors. They don't understand which one is your design and which one is a study. So keep it strictly to your own designs. Don't include fan arts or things that you do for fun or studies, right? Just a tip on that regard.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Actually, I have one last question. It's more personal, like more for me than everyone else.
Please.
So I am an artist, not a concept artist, just an artist. The problem that I have is I learned drawing immediately. Like I jumped 10 steps without any fundamentals, without any shapes, lines, without anything, just copying. And now I can copy with a good way and a good grade and everything, but I can't create anything, and I don't know how to learn everything from the start because I have bad habits of the copying. What should I do?
I totally understand that, and it is not a bad habit. It's actually a great thing because you already draw, right? So you already are in the act of drawing. Your muscles are trained, your eyes are trained. You already have a lot over somebody who has never picked a pencil, right? What you need to do right now is focus on learning the fundamentals, because that is what's going to allow you to build things from your imagination. Combine that with design thinking. So this is building your visual library, studying from different subjects, like I mentioned. Then all these things contribute to then you being able to convey your ideas as well. But it's not a negative thing, because at the end of the day, we have to be inspired, right? This is it's not an easy thing to learn the skill. So having that drive, that inspiration, you start drawing because you wanted to copy your favorite characters and these things. And this is extremely important. That is what drives us. It's we all came into this industry because we enjoyed these kind of stuff. We enjoyed anime and games and films and stuff like that, right? So that's a plus. It's not a negative thing. It's great that you have that. Now you have to combine that with actual, fundamentals, and then you already have an edge over somebody who is not used to drawing, because a part of drawing is hand-to-eye coordination, right? Is putting mileage into actually using your fingers and hand and eyes to draw things. So it's important. It's good.
Thank you.
I think, Zainab, if we don't have a lot of questions, so we can just take a group photo, then we can close the session.
Yeah.
You don't have any questions, Abdurrahman?
I have a lot of questions.
Okay. I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much for this class. It was amazing. And it's really inspiring to see your work. I think if you can stop sharing this at the...
Oh, yes, sure. But just one final thing. So, yes, my pleasure. It's really, I'm very passionate about this industry and what we do. So, and I basically went through the process of self-teaching. So I've done all of this. I've seen all the the challenges that one might face. So please reach out if you have any questions. I'm on Instagram. I'm mostly on Instagram for social media, but reach out if you have any questions, anything you're unsure about, and I'll happily respond. Or if I don't have the answer, I will lead you to where you might potentially find that. So yes, please don't hesitate. I'm there.
I will also include in the email your contact information for anyone who wants to contact you.
Perfect.
Okay, then we can take the group photo that Abdurrahman wants.
So we are posing right now.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to open their camera, so you are free to do that. If not, then we will use your profile pictures. So yes, Zainab, as usual, start the countdown.
Okay. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Really appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad to know that there are a lot of people with interest in this really cool, aspect of our industry. We do have some really exciting upcoming things. So the trailer of our game will drop in a few weeks, and we've been working on it for a few years. So if you want to see more of the cool stuff that we do at Kevir Entertainment, you can find us on our website, our social media. Yeah, but especially this month, we have a few cool things planned, so don't miss that.
I hope we get the visa and tried it there.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. We go together. Have a good day, everyone.
Okay,
Have a
thank you
good
so
day.
much.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good
Bye-bye.
day. See
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.